We have been told since like kindergarten that recycling is a good thing to do. We're supposed to do it with paper and plastic and cans and all the things. One of the things we probably know we should do it with is our devices. But it's a hassle. It's not like you can just plop a phone into a blue box. So, what's the way in order to incent people to recycle devices and to make it relatively easy for them? Well, here's a new idea. It's called ecoATM. We're going to talk about this idea with Neil Freed. He is Senior Vice President with the ecoATM, and he joins us from Hoboken, New Jersey. Hello there.
Hi, Bruce. Good to be here.
Where did the idea of ecoATM come from?
Well, the business was founded close to 15 or 16 years ago, and I think it was a novel idea at the time, and it was how do we automate that device recycling process for many of us. When you buy a new phone, you could potentially trade in your old phone. It adds an enormous amount of time to the process, but over time, people accumulate devices in their homes, and ecoATM was really the easiest way for any consumer to potentially recycle your device in a very seamless way. It's around 7 minutes, 6.5 minutes from start to finish, and we can pay you in cash on the spot.
You don't have a gazillion locations here in Canada, but you have some. If someone were to walk by one of these ATM machines, what would they see? Do they look exactly like a bank ATM?
I think our name sometimes can be a little misleading because we have the word ATM in them, but it is a large kiosk. It's a white and green machine. It has a user interaction, a front screen that you can touch. We ask the consumer some very basic questions, but on top of the machine, we are advertising the opportunity to trade in a phone for instant cash. On the side of the machine, we have those similar prompts on the poster, and really trying to pull the consumer in and out of the gate, we're trying to educate consumers. We're trying to make them aware that this is possible. Very rarely do people see our machine for the first time, where they actually have their excess phones on them. So what we typically see is a consumer touching the machine. They run through the pricing module on the machine to see what their device could be worth if they had brought it with them, and then they'll return in a subsequent visit with their device.
I probably have, I don't know, three iPhone 6s kicking around somewhere. Are they worth anything?
I think they are. Obviously, it all comes down. Well, we pride ourselves on our desire to take any device in any condition from a consumer. So what we try and do is present an offer that's enticing back to the customer based on the condition of the phone. There are some limitations, but by and large, we do promote recycling and want consumers to have a satisfying experience.
What's the dollar range here? Is it $1 for that iPhone 6 or is it $100? I have absolutely no idea.
I'd have to look at our catalog to answer that exactly. But what's interesting is our machines in Canada are only able to dispense cash. So the smallest denomination we can issue on a machine is around $5 in Canadian currency. So it usually is the minimum that we would pay in that instance. But we are also can pay hundreds of dollars back to a consumer if it's a more recent phone in great condition. And we have, a mechanism in the US that we will be rolling out in Canada so that consumers can price these devices online. So we have a catalog in the US. You can visit it, but there are different devices and different conditions that need to get configured. And we wanted to hit the ground running, and we felt like there was a lot of demand. So part one was let's get the machines into some partner stores and get consumers access to them.
One of the questions I'm sure almost everybody would have is what do I need to do to prep my phone to give it to you? Because I've got photos on there, I got a contact database on there, I have all sorts of things. I don't want to just put that phone with all of that stuff on it into your white little box.
So we get this question all the time from consumers, and on our website and in our interaction with the consumer on the kiosk. There's a bunch of things that we encourage. We want folks to factory reset their devices. We want them to remove any locks that they may have if their device is tethered to their Apple account. We have a whole bunch of prompts that we will not allow devices to enter into our kiosk unless those security features are removed, and it's in part to make sure that the transaction is safe and secure. but also we want to encourage customers to adhere to some best practices, which is data deletion. And we do have a data wiping process in our facilities, but we always encourage customers to prep the device for that potential trade-in experience.
And what do you then do with the phone? So you pay whatever that amount is, someone comes to pick those devices up. What happens next?
So the process is pretty standard. We've been as a business operating, like I said, for close to 15 years, and we've got a pretty complicated supply chain. If you think about the cell phone ecosystem or the wireless ecosystem, everybody has a phone. There are billions of phones on the planet, and then as a result, there's a thriving ecosystem where folks are interested in different parts, different components. And then there's the traditional recycling. So I'd say there's really three principal destinations for any device that we collect. One is someone will acquire it from us and then refurbish and make it available for resale. So one of our corporate missions is obviously to help make the planet more sustainable, but also make technology more affordable and more accessible. We have these refurbishment platforms that will pick up our devices and then repair them and put them in condition so that they can be purchased by consumers. We also have very similar companies that just want access to the parts. So we will take any device in any condition. So just because the screen is broken doesn't mean the cameras are broken, doesn't mean that the buttons aren't reusable. So we have a handful of buyers or a cohort of buyers that are just interested in the parts and the components. And lastly, we have this recycling bucket where in situations where the phone can't be repurposed and reused, we want to make sure that the elements get extracted, the copper, the gold, the critical metals, the materials can get repurposed for other supply chains. And we have partners that specialize in that recycling business.
At what point in the process does your company determine what my phone is worth? Like I may think it's great, but I put it into the white box and you see, well, it's like cracked and the camera doesn't work and whatever. Surely that's going to dictate how much money you're willing to give me for it.
Yeah, so our kiosks are pretty sophisticated. So we've really simplified the consumer experience. But behind that experience is a lot of complicated technology. So to start, we do an electrical interrogation on the device. We pull what's called the IMEI, which is really the serial number for the phone, make sure it's not lost or stolen or in any database where it shouldn't be acquired by us. We also use machine vision and AI to automatically detect the make and model of the phone. So we don't rely on the customer to tell us about the device. We'll do an electrical inspection and a computer assisted inspection of the actual device to identify the make and model. And then we will do a series of tests through some additional computer imaging of is the LCD broken, is the glass broken, will the device turn on or off? It's a little bit easier and that happens up front. And with that information, we then access a pricing catalog where we have access to a pretty complicated database of information relative to what our downstream suppliers are interested in paying for devices, and where we see the consumer acceptance points, and that kind of triangulates on an offer to that customer. But at any point, the customer can exit a transaction. They can retrieve their device from the kiosk. So you're never locked into your experience. You can change your mind at any point along the way, but we try our best to deliver as much value as we can back to the consumer, and those are the elements we kind of use to determine pricing.
And all that's happening while I'm standing there.
Within that 6 minute experience, which is great, and I think that's why we have such great usage across our network. In the U.S., we have close to 7,000 machines.
Wow.
And every day there's in some locations we've got a line of folks that are trying to use the machine because it's that simple, that easy, and that rewarding for the consumer.
Now, we've talked a lot about phones. We have a lot of electronic devices around us these days, Kindles and tablets and, I don't know, security cameras, you name it. What are some of the other big categories that you could see this applying to that are in addition to traditional phones?
So one of the constraints we have in our kiosk is the form factor. We can't take a laptop in a kiosk, but we have plans and we're debating the different technology changes we would make to collect a watch in a kiosk. Right now, we have two kiosks in Canada. We have a version of our kiosk that will only accept smartphones. There's in the US, there's another version of our kiosk that will accept a tablet. And I think as we start to see more technologies emerge, like wearables is a huge category, we want to figure out ways to adapt our current kiosk form to enable customers to potentially recycle those devices too.
Just one last question before we go. When you think about the reason why someone would do this, how much of it is I want the $5 or the $100, and how much of it is it's just more responsible than me tossing that device into landfill?
I'd say that, we've created three personas for our customers. We have the sustainability minded consumer that, buys sustainable products, that is more in that sort of mindset of recycling. And that's a primary motivator. We have another convenience oriented consumer, folks that wouldn't do it unless we put the machine right in front of them. And our
Right.
strategy is to put these machines in highly convenient locations. And then we have like a deal driven consumer, which is where cash is in payout is a little bit more important. It's hard to say where everybody sits, but I think we have enough critical mass in each of those personas where we think about marketing and we think about customer engagement. We have messages that will resonate.
Really interesting stuff. Neil, thank you for joining us to talk about it today.
Yeah, Bruce, great. Thank you for the time.
Neil Freed is an SVP at a company called ecoATM. They have launched a limited number of kiosks here in Canada that will allow you to just put your phone in there, have them assess it in just a couple of minutes, and get some money back. An interesting idea.